So why you shouldn't memorize stuff for either the telephone or especially for an on-site interview? Reason number one, and probably the one that is the most obvious of all, is that your answers will sound scripted. So if your answer will sound scripted, then some of you may say, okay, but they might even appreciate that we prepared for the interview. Well, you'd be right in the case of a low-performing company, but in the case of a good-paying job, that's not going to fly. It's that simple. So if it's going to sound scripted, it means they will most likely become less engaged in the conversation. That is, they will get bored of your answers, and that will obviously not play to your advantage. The second reason why you don't want to memorize stuff for an interview is that because you cannot memorize anything. And so to be clear here, I'm primarily speaking about the behavioral part of the interview, about tell me about the time when, or tell me about yourself, and these types of questions. You might have a point if you'd be applying for a technical role such as a junior software development engineer, where if you learn a few algorithms by heart, you might get away with it. That I agree. But for the behavioral part of the interview, I don't think it's a feasible approach. Actually, I'm pretty sure it's not a feasible approach, because you cannot memorize anything. I can give you hundreds of examples of such questions, and you won't. It's simply you don't have enough time to do these types of explorations. Number three, and this is where it gets interesting. Say you do memorize answers to 50 questions, right? What happens in a job interview is that as much as you'd like to think that they follow a strict protocol and they would ask you only questions that would be designed by the hiring manager, those questions will more likely than not get rephrased, or the bar raiser has the luxury to ask you whatever they want. And the problem is they rephrase this question is that your reflex, if you memorize things, would say, what type of question is this? Because I cannot remember it of preparing for it. When in fact your reflex here would be, what are they looking for in my answer? What's the question all about? So in other words, your ability to click to find an answer to the question, even if you memorized it, will decrease. Right? So this is another very a big danger. And number four, and that's linked with number three, with my previous point, what if they come up with a new question? Because your reflex will be, hey, let me think of one of those 50 questions that I memorized. Which one of these should be it? And if you cannot find one, you already spent 5 to 10 seconds. You already panicked by then, so you can imagine that the probability that you come up with a genuine answer here, with a new answer, significantly decreases, right? Or I've never heard of a standard job interview into which the candidate would get asked 100% of the questions that they already prepared for. So it's not like applying for a driver's license here. So there is this element of surprise in a job interview, which, by the way, employers want to introduce at all costs. So by memorizing these things, it will definitely not play to your advantage. And I would very much argue with you that the number of questions that you'll be able to answer with scripted, with previously prepared and memorized answers, memorized, not just previously prepared, will be of significantly less importance when compared to not being able to give an answer at all. So in other words, if you give 3 answers that you memorized, that let's say are perfect, you make it sound like they are not scripted, that's fine. But if they ask you another question, if you don't have anything to say about it and you'll block, is much worse than if you would give 4 genuine answers on the spot that were not scripted, but maybe you thought about those scenarios previously while preparing for the job interview, so they won't be that perfect. But I believe it's not that hard, to follow star format, to follow template here. And number 5, why you shouldn't memorize questions and pretty much any content for a job interview is just think about the definition, the word behavioral question. That's looking for a behavior, right? Behavior. So if you employ such a behavior such as one that memorizes things, it means you're a templated type of person. Now, if you read only for a few minutes Amazon's shareholder letters or about Amazon's culture, about them being peculiar, that's, by the way, from their jobs website, you'll understand, you'll have a pretty good idea that these things do not resonate well. Like memorizing things with peculiar way of doing things. And I would even go further and say that it doesn't even make sense to memorize the leadership principles, in spite of the fact that there are many places recommending this. I wouldn't recommend. I would rather go with understanding the behavior that's exhibited in each of those leadership principles, and then understand the behavior that they are looking for when asking you a question, and then go giving your best possible answer given what they are already asking you. So I haven't even mentioned that, by slightly altering a question, a completely different answer would be expected here, such as tell me about them when you took a risk. This is a positive question. This you tell about your successes. Tell me about when you took a risk and failed. It completely changes. This is the failure story. So I didn't even cover the risk of not even employing the right answer that you memorized here in the equation. So hopefully I convinced you that it's really not a good idea to memorize answers to behavioral questions, primarily in a job interview. If you do want to support this channel, please feel free to share your interview outcomes in the comment sections of the video, and thank you very much for watching.